At some point on a long hike, something will start to hurt. The question isn't if, it's what you do next. Handle it well, and you may be able to finish your hike. Ignore it, and you may have to get off trail altogether. The stakes are high. It's not just the physical pain, you're also dealing with mental pressure and the social struggles of potentially falling behind your friends or your newfound trail family. This is what I had to learn the hard way as a beginner long distance hiker. So, whether you're a through hiker, a section hiker, or a hiker with some pre existing issues, being prepared for these three phases of injury might save your lifelong dream of completing a weeks or months long hike. Before I jump in, I just want to note that I'm not a medical professional. However, I do speak from experience. I've been dealing with chronic foot and leg issues since birth, but despite all that, I was determined to hike the Pacific Crest Trail back in 2024. And by no means did I complete all 2,650 miles, but I did manage to stay on trail for months and eventually I reached Canada. Let me just state up front, there is no single right way to handle an injury. However, there are some smart ways to manage it. Probably the best thing you can do is try your very, very hardest to prevent it altogether. Set yourself up for success before you hit the trail. That includes accepting some hard realities. One of them is that old injuries don't just disappear. You may have found a way to deal with the discomfort on a day-to-day basis, or maybe in your daily life you just don't notice it that much. However, when you are on trail and you're hiking 10, 15, 20 miles, maybe even more, day in, day out, that becomes harder and harder to ignore. Your body is under constant stress and probably not able to heal itself overnight. Or you may be someone like me and you've dealt with chronic pain your whole life. I am the last person to tell you to stop chasing your dreams, but it is important to understand your limitations before you sign up for something like a big hike. Once you know your starting point, you know which areas need a little bit more attention before your trail. And yes, I'm talking about months because it can take a long time for connective tissue like joints, tendons, and ligaments to meaningfully adapt and strengthen. Of course, if you watch this and your trail start date is only a couple weeks out, anything is better than nothing. I've talked all about the importance of strength training and how to adjust for injury or disability in a previous video. I will link that up here if you want to get into that. But long story short, spend 2 to 3 times a week strength training your lower body, focus on single leg exercises, and also work on some mobility, whether that's for your ankles, knees, hips, calves, wherever you feel you hold some weakness. I hate to break it to you, but if you only start stretching once it hurts, you're already too late. Another way to help prevent any issues is in the gear you carry. Ankle braces, knee braces, K-tape, a cork ball, leukotape, maybe a compression sleeve. I've carried all of these items at one point or another. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you to carry 2 pounds of what if weight from the start, but this all comes back to knowing your reality. If you know that you're heading into the Sierras where you'll be descending for miles and miles, day in, day out, carry the freaking knee brace or carry some leukotape and know how to apply it. If you're headed into the Oregon volcanic area where there's lots of loose rock and you know that you have some wonky ankles that twist easily, then carry an ankle brace or carry some leukotape and know how to apply it. One practical note, if you deal with swelling, I have something that might be worth trying. So my weak ankle swells up easily, especially when I'm out on trail, when it's hot outside and I'm on my feet all day. I do all the things. I take off my shoes during breaks. I elevate my feet. I stick my feet in cold water and streams whenever I come across them. And I also carry a compression sleeve, but This was given to me on the Pacific Crest Trail. It's a firefly recovery device, and you stick it right below your knee. You need to find the right spot, but once you do, you lie down, you turn it on, and it sends little electric shocks down your leg and it makes your foot twitch. And studies showed that it helps with faster recovery because of increased blood flow. Now, I don't think it's a guarantee that this will work for everyone, and I'm definitely not saying that this is the ultimate cure against swelling, but I personally really like using it. I put it on for half an hour each night when I'm relaxing in my tent, and I think it contributes to helping to keep the swelling manageable. Either way, I don't think any of these are magic fixes, but I do think they can help prevent injury or they can buy you time when you're out on trail. One final tip in terms of gear and injuries, I think people who deal with injuries probably benefit the most from keeping an eye on their base weight. Now, I'm not saying that you should go ultralight, but anything that you can save and lightens your backpack helps keep the pressure and the weight off your injuries. Finally, in the category of prevention, I think there's one more important thing to talk about. This is something that I find really, really hard to do, and that is maintaining healthy habits when you're on the trail. For example, it would be really good to do some stretching and warming up before you hobble away in the morning. Likewise, when you're on your break, and especially in the evenings, it's good to take some time to work out your tight muscles. So you can use your hands, you can use a cork ball, you can even use your trekking pole to do some massaging. Either way, all I'm trying to say is that it's good to spend some time on your body before you collapse in your tent. Another important daily habit while you're out on trail has to do with nutrition. Now, I know it's so tempting to live off of peanut butter ramen, Skittles, and Snickers bars, and while that may give you the calories that you need every day, your body probably needs a little bit more to basically perform on endurance athlete level day in, day out. So maybe keep an eye on your protein intake, your electrolytes, and try and get as many vegetables and fruits into your diet as possible. I really like walking out of town with some pre-cut bell peppers, maybe one or two avocados, and whenever I'm in town, I will order a side salad with my bacon cheeseburger. I also typically carry some type of greens powder to supplement essential vitamins and minerals, but that's not for everyone. The last and perhaps biggest one in this category is prioritizing sleep and recovery. I sometimes also carry some magnesium tablets that I take right before I crawl into my sleeping bag at night. But in the end, a good night's rest is the most important thing to heal your body, reduce inflammation, and ultimately help prevent injuries. Okay, now let's say you've done all those things and tried to prevent injury, but somehow something pops up anyway. What do you do? I hope your answer isn't to just ignore it and keep going. Take it seriously early on and diagnose. First, you ask yourself, is this normal trail pain or is this a problem? If you're just generally sore and your left side is equally sore as the right, and you feel like the pain improves after warming up a little, that's probably normal. If you experience sharp pain anywhere, swelling, some instability, maybe you feel like you're compensating with the other side, those are some red flags. If you're experiencing any of these, you should ask yourself, does it get worse every day? Do I feel like I'm changing my gait because of the pain? Does it not get better with rest? And let's be honest, am I masking the pain with ibuprofen? Once you answer yes to any of these questions, it's probably time for you to look for some help. Luckily, that's really easy nowadays with telehealth. It is super fast and easy to find a professional, and you typically have an appointment within days. Now, I know if you're hiking on a tight budget, this can be really tricky. I would say if you're able to keep this in mind when you're saving up for a big adventure like this, in the end, your health is the most important thing, and it's good to have some money set aside if anything were to pop up, especially if you're dealing with previous injuries. You know that something might come up. It's good to have that little buffer. I think Google and ChatGPT can be useful, but they simply cannot replace a good physiotherapist. And that is definitely 1,000 times better than some random dude on trail telling you exactly what's wrong with you and how to fix it. So I want to give a huge shout out to Blaze Physio, who really helped me a lot when I was struggling on the Pacific Crest Trail. If you've hiked the PCT before, you probably know her. She drives around in her van, following the hiker bubble and providing in-person physio appointments. And she does video calls as well. The support is just awesome, and my hike would have ended a lot sooner if it weren't for Blaze. So now you have your diagnosis and you actually have to deal with it. This is the hard part. Just pushing through is probably the biggest mistake you can make. Now, I know it's hard, especially with the social pressure. You don't want to fall behind your trail family. You're afraid that you'll be alone all of a sudden, or maybe it messes with your imaginary schedule. Sadly, on these big trails, there's a big focus on miles. Everyone asks you, how fast do you hike? What's your daily mileage? And if you are one of those people and you get injured, that might be a big hit to your ego. Or maybe you have this mentality of either I finish the trail or I quit. While in reality, there are many in between options as well. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story on the Pacific Crest Trail, which really took a turn on the LA Aqueduct. This is a famous stretch in the desert section. It starts in Hikertown, and you're basically walking on top of or alongside the LA Aqueduct for about 17 miles. So earlier in the day, I had already hiked 13 miles because I was catching up with my friends, and we were going to hike the aqueduct after sunset. We had lights, we had music, everyone was cheery. So I decided to join, and that was a big mistake. I really didn't think I would fall into this trap of pushing through to stay with friends, but I did. 17 miles later, and at around 1 a.m., I was using my trekking poles as crutches. I made it to the next water source, but I could barely sleep from the pain. And the next morning, I had to get a ride out to Tehachapi to recover for several days. Looking back, I think there are a couple things I could have done differently. Either I could have just let my friends go ahead and meet up with them in Tehachapi because they were going to take a zero there anyways, or I could have hiked the first couple miles with them, camp somewhere along the way, and get up before sunrise to keep hiking. And that would have given me a more sensible split of my daily miles. It's easy to say that in hindsight, though. Back then, I was a beginner long distance hiker, and I did not know about the detrimental impact of hiking on concrete instead of dirt trail. On top of that, I had sent myself a resupply box in Hikertown, so my backpack was really heavy. Both those things combined put way too much pressure on my feet, so a lighter pack and breaking up the miles with more rest could have saved me a lot of trouble further down the line. Because once you wreck something, you're kind of stuck with it. Still, that leads me to the final point, and that's something that I did do well in this scenario. Before I set out on this night hike, I knew that I was kind of pushing it, so I made sure that I had enough food and water. I knew my exit options. I was camped by water and there was shade, so I would have been fine even if I couldn't have arranged that pickup the next morning. You don't want to put yourself in dangerous situations, so you need to think of different scenarios, especially if you're dealing with something like an injury. I knew that I could have stayed by that water all day and walked back in the evening if I had to. Even though I am quite stubborn, I am definitely not reckless. In the end, injury doesn't mean your hike is over, but it also doesn't have to destroy your body. Adjusting your plans is not failing. And I know it sounds cheesy, but this is all part of the journey. Ultimately, your long-term health and well-being is most important. And while that may be hard to keep in mind when you're in the middle of your trail, putting all of that on the line just to finish this one hike right now might set you back from other adventures further down the road. If you've dealt with injury, I'd love it if you share your experience and how you handled it down below, and hopefully that'll help some other aspiring hikers in their preparations. If you've enjoyed this video, a like and a comment goes a long way, and please consider subscribing as well. I'll be sharing more of these kind of videos ahead of hiking season, as well as some of my other travels and adventures. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.